Welcome to those who are joining. And I guess it'll be uncharacteristic for me to not say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be, whatever you may be doing. Hello, and welcome to this space. Welcome to this little corner that we have where we talk about internal family system. I always say, Sarah, is it system or systems? I know we've had a conversation about this.
Did we? No, we never.
Sorry?
Internal family systems. Yeah.
We have. We have had a
So many
conversation about
times
it.
that I forget, it's kind of like when you see certain things all the time, you kind of don't notice the details anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's systems. Yeah.
It is systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
But it's
so
also
yeah,
big.
and welcome. Thanks, Deborah. There is an S on the end. Welcome, Sue. Welcome to everybody. Welcome, George. And welcome back. Welcome to the new people. And what we do here is kind of call it a book club loosely, but it's talking about internal family systems and using the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz as the foundation and the kind of four walls to talk about it in. So, Sarah, over to you for the practice. Bit of
I just
misleading
wanted,
names. It's not about a family system. Ah, nice.
well,
I'll
if I
let you
may,
answer that one.
I may answer that one. Yes, which is actually interesting because whenever I talk to people about internal family systems, they're always talking about family constellation practice or exercises. So they're also a little bit confused. But it's about the internal family, so the family of parts that we have. We talk about system because the parts have relationships with each other. So it's a system that, like where parts work with each other or against each other. So we have like this approach of systems thinking with the internal parts within us, and this is called family. Also coming from Dick Schwartz, because he was originally a family therapist and couples therapist, and he worked systematically with, with people who were in relationships, right? Family is relationships, basically. And the term comes from there. I get that it's misleading. A lot of people, when I talk about internal family systems, don't really get what I'm talking about. They think of, something else about the external family. So yeah, it is about the internal family, though. You can,
Exactly.
once you know how to work with your inner family, it extends to the outside family or relationships as well. And this is the beautiful thing about internal family systems. It's all about relationships. And what is the thing that, quote unquote, triggers us most or hurts us most? It's relational, no? So with internal family systems, we really learned how to build secure relationships with parts within ourselves and then extend that in the outside world with other people. But yeah, I'm digressing.
No, I agree. Completely agree. And I mean, for me, again, speaking purely personally, like my work in kind of parts work and IFS has really kind of impacted my engagement with, yeah, my direct family, but then also those people who are around me who I have a relationship with. And I can often identify, maybe not necessarily in terms of my various parts, but especially going through the book and some of the types that they talk about, you know, sergeant major, inner critic, all of that. I can kind of pick those out in people within family and elsewhere as well.
But the beautiful thing is also that, what I learned is that I started to notice that I'm talking to a part of that person and not themselves, right? Not their self. So I know what is active. And because I have learned how to relate to similar parts within me, I then know how to relate to the parts of other people.
Exactly.
As long as, my parts are not triggered, but I can also, see if certain parts are coming up, right? I can take inventory on my own self energy, how much is accessible, available to me, and how much blended I am with my part that is responding to the part of the other person. And a lot of conflict that we see is basically just my part and the part of the other part, or, parts fighting each other, right? Because when we are blended, right, we don't come from the place of self where we are open and curious, but we right like fight them, or we fawn, or we people please, whatever it is, right? Whatever part comes up in conflict. Yeah. So I think that's why it's so beautiful. This work is beautiful for relationships as well, not just in the relationships, but relationships with other people. And I've seen
Exactly.
in my family, I've actually seen changes. I've seen how when I'm in self and relating from myself with the part of my mom or my sister, for example, right? How that shifts them more into self all of a sudden. And how we relate and connect on such a different level because I was in that self energy. It's beautiful what it can do for relationships.
It's infectious.
Hmm.
And I I remember for a long time talking about, at the beginning of this kind of journey 5 years ago. Um, I always remember two things. I was thinking to myself, oh, I want to be happy, I want to be happy. And then also talking about, I want to be solid and steady and stable. And, the more I've done this work, the more I've started to see that when I am truly authentic in self, that's when there is that calm, you know? Um, that's when there is that, you know, hum of a fridge in the background where it's just all working. And, like people can do or say or upset or try and affect you in whatever way. And even if I get to a situation where overwhelm happens, and overwhelm obviously does happen, but not to the same degree that you would before, in terms of it doesn't pull me away from self like it did previously. That and just for me, solely recognizing what self feels like. Yeah. I mean, that has just been pure magic for me. Um, and I know, you and I talk about this all the time. That's what I love so much about this. What do you call it? Modality.
Yeah, modality.
That it can, and again, always speaking about self, you
Mhm.
know, that it can give me that happiness, that being solid, that being stable, that being all of that stuff which I'd spoken about and wanted. And to be honest, I don't really actually ever think or consider anymore because I just feel it as being when I'm in my authentic space or not. Full stop. It is.
Yeah.
It's,
One thing that I want to add from my own experience that I just went through the past couple of weeks, maybe, is that self can also be quite protective. Not as a protector part, but in a way where Self wants to help the vulnerable parts within us, and it knows what hurts them, and it makes changes and draws boundaries in order to protect the vulnerable parts within us, not just only to be with the parts within us that are, vulnerable and unburden them, but also to say, okay, certain situations I'm not gonna be involved anymore because I know that this is not feeling aligned or good for certain parts within me. Um, and it's a different way of protecting than protector parts would do. Like there's a different energetic to it. It's just like an inner intuitive knowing. And you're kind of like, I
Mm.
feel like I'm like my mama, I'm a mama bear for my vulnerable parts. Not in a protective, not in a protective way, but in a I'm honoring the parts within me
Exactly.
so much that I don't let them go or let myself go into situations anymore that are not good for it. And I connect with the parts that want to go in that direction, maybe, right? And see, hey, what's going on there? Because there might be polarity and other, different parts are like, no, we want to go there. And it's like, what do you think? Why?
And I
Why?
guess, I
Like,
guess, and I hear that completely. For me, I see it as trust.
mhm.
You know, I had a not too dissimilar situation whenever it was X months ago or whatever, where I was about to get into a situation that didn't feel right, but and again thinking out loud now, and this is what you talk about, I guess what you're referring to when you talk about polarity. There was a part which was like, no, it's fine, we can do it. Let's go forward with this. But not in a rebellious way or not in a cold way, but in a way of actually trying to help. And the more it kind of got involved in that, there was just a realization that this was potentially going to put me in a space that wasn't conducive to me and what I was doing and time, importantly, my time. And interestingly enough, there wasn't, you know, I was able to, in the context of a 15-minute walk, look internally and be like, you know what? We actually can, navigate this situation and it would be fine. And we have enough trust in self that when it stopped being fine, we would be able to have that boundary to say, this is enough. I don't want to go any further. And there was just like a natural, strong sense of knowing, confidence, and understanding that we're okay. We could do this. However, then there was a part which said, but what's the sacrifice? What's the sacrifice? And yeah, I mean, this is why I think this whole this is outstanding stuff. But anyways,
Yeah, I
we'll get
know
into
those inner
tangent forever.
dilemmas. It's always interesting.
But
Um,
yeah, there's a couple of questions here. So Deborah say, I'm finally becoming adept at recognizing other people's parts, and it changes how I relate with them in a more positive way,
mhm.
completely. And I love that I show their parts the same seas that I show my own parts, completely. And you know, again, I've said this quite a lot. I work in a quite egoic, yeah, whatever, industry, and I just kind of looking at it now, my calm comes from the fact that I have a relationship with my ego. So my ego is not in competition with everybody else's ego. My ego is just kind of like, all right, like whatever. I'm not responding to, John, James, Jane. I'm just in my own space. And I'm here to interact with this guy and not you guys.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. I think this would be a good way for people to experience a little bit of their own unblending, maybe.
100%.
Yeah. All
Let's
right.
do it.
So let's go into a practice before we move on to chapter 3, which I think it was my most interestingly my favorite chapter in a weird way, but more on that later.
You love chapter 3.
I do. All right. Okay. So I'll do the same with you. I'm just going to get into comfortable space, getting ready for a little meditation. So you can just take a comfortable seat or lie down, whatever feels best for you. There's really no one way to do it. Just take your time to arrive in your body for a moment. So this exercise that I'm gonna lead you through is something that in some way I do almost daily. For me, it's a check-in to see what parts are present, to listen to them, to come in a little relationship with them, and potentially also to ask them to create a little bit more space if they trust me enough so that I can be a little bit more in self, which is called unblending, when parts are stepping back and you're coming more into self energy. So for this meditation, just again, drop your awareness into your body. If it helps, you can close your eyes or just gaze at a spot in front of you and take a few deep breaths. And then just sense into your body or around your body what is present, what parts are present. Parts can show themselves as thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, impulses, sometimes visuals. Just sense in and around your body what you can notice. Maybe there's a tension in your gut or in your shoulder, or you can sense something above your shoulder, around your head, maybe some thoughts. These are all trailheads to hearts. So just notice what is around. And notice what they are saying. Notice if they see each other, if they see you. One way I like to connect with them, yes, I just say, "Hi, I'm here. I see you all." And see how they react. And you can just see if you can extend some curiosity towards them and ask them what they want you to know. If there's something that they want to share with you or show you. And when they talk to you, you can respond back to them as you would with a small child. You can thank them for sharing what they shared with you. If it's the first time that they connected with you, you can tell them who you are, how old you are. Maybe you sense intuitively what they need to hear from you, and you can tell them that. Now, if that feels somewhat complete, you can just sense back into your body if there's any more parts that want to say something. If the other parts still need a little bit more time, grant them their wish. You can stay longer with them. But if they trust, maybe you can ask them to create a little bit more space for you to see who else is here and who else wants you to notice them and connect with them. So if you sense that more parts are coming up, you can then again, from a place of curiosity, Just tell them that you're here, you're listening, you're curious. What do they want to share with you? And again, you can come into a conversation with them like you would with a small child, extending your compassion and understanding towards them. Let them know who you are, how old you are, and see how they respond. When you feel that each part was able to say a little bit something, you're able to connect with them in a way. If it feels ready for your system, now this is only up to you. Maybe your system needs more trust to be able to do that, but you can try to ask the parts that came up to just relax and step back and give you a little bit more space. It also helps to ask them to create a little bit distance from you. And if they're willing to do that, sense how it feels to have more space, more spaciousness for self. Notice how it feels in your body, in your nervous system. And make note of that, because this is an indicator for you that you can check in daily to see if you're in self, or at least a little bit in self. Now, to wrap up this exercise, just connect one more last time with your parts. You can thank them for showing up. And if they were able to, you can thank them for creating just a bit more space for you. And if there were any parts that felt like they really needed your attention, you can also check in with them. And if it feels right for you, you can tell them that this won't be the last time you checked in with them. You can tell them that you will be coming back. And whenever that feels complete, again, thank your parts and slowly come back. So this is a practice or some form of practice that I do, but you can also do, and I do that also a lot of times when I'm on the train or just waiting, like when I'm waiting for something or someone. I just check in and see what is currently present. Sometimes I have one or two parts, sometimes a little bit more that are present, and I'm just extending just for a few seconds. It doesn't need long. I'm just extending my curiosity and compassion, just basically myself energy to them, telling them that I see them and I'm here and I got this. You're not alone, right? Depending on the part that shows up. So
Checking in.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Just mini check-ins throughout the day. I know that for myself, for example, that hand on my heart helps. Just like, I see you. I'm here. It's all good. And they're like, oh, okay. um, so yeah.
So we'll give some people time to note what they want to note, but should we go into chapter 3?
Yes. Chapter 3 is probably the most spiritual chapter, in the sense where it talks about um, self, right? Our own self energy. And then self that is outside of us, right? Our longing to connect with a greater self than ourself, basically. And how, for example, what in Christianity is labeled as sin is basically seen as burdens that disconnect us from the um, essence of ourself, but also to something greater, something bigger, right? Meaning, whatever term you want to use it, God, universe, higher power, right? Something universal. And one thing that, one C that self has is connectedness, the feeling of connectedness, the feeling of we are part of something greater. We feel connected to, um, you know, the world around us, but also connected to a greater power, right? Something greater than us. And how burdens can make, first of all, our parts disconnect from self, right? And us as the human with the parts feel disconnected from a greater self. Um, and I love the analogy of fractals in that chapter. You wanted to say something, Tariro, but
No, no, carry on, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep
go
going.
on.
Well, I was just going to say, just to add to the point about self was, our authentic self being connected to that higher power in that, you know, the sentiment of we are created in God's image,
Yeah.
our authentic self is. And so being in that authentic space is that, dare I say it, next to godliness piece, that connection to that spiritual essence and element of things. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to add. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Um, so what I thought was very interesting is the concept of fractals. Like we have parts and we have our self energy, and then our parts have their own self energy, right? Which I sensed when I did the unburdening. And I also came just recently, I tried it out a little bit and experimented with one of my parts who was very resistant to trusting me. And it was kind of like ambivalent. And I noticed that my part had parts, that one part of my part wanted to trust me, another part of that part didn't want to trust me. And it goes down in fractals, right? Richard Schwartz also mentions in this chapter that when he was working with people with dissociative identity disorder, sorry, that they were their part. He was talking directly to their parts and the parts of the clients, and those parts were revealing to him that those parts had parts too.
He uses
Now
the
you can
Russian
take
doll as
that
an analogy.
exactly. I just love the fractal. I don't know, this speaks more to me. But then you can also extend that to, not to the micro level, but to the macro level, right? So we are part of something bigger, right? Something that has a self, which for me, I use the term God. Um, and we are part of it. So I think this sense of connectedness also comes with sensing into that. And I'm saying sensing because it's embodied, it's a feeling that we get to once we unburden enough, or our parts are able to unblend enough at least.
Exactly. And again, I'll talk about, some of that feeling that I feel on occasion, more often now than previously, where, you know, and thinking about it now, I do have almost a spiritual feeling. I have this connection to something which is, I don't want to say necessarily greater than, but something true, and connection to this warm energy, which just really kind of resonates in me, and the work that I've kind of taken to really, again, I've said this for the last couple of times, like I've worked very definitely with certain parts within me, and I'm in that place now where, right, it's now time to start to engage with the other parts, and to get a bit deeper in that. And this the 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 energy which comes from self is, and reading chapter 3, it really kind of epitomized it for me. There is a spiritual aspect and element to it wholeheartedly, you know.
You know why it's my favorite chapter?
Why?
Remember what I, before we've read that book, remember what experience, what weird experience, spiritual experience I had in spring?
Yes.
My little personal story where I was sitting in bed drinking my celery juice, and all of a sudden I felt this love and compassion just wash over me, and it did not come from me. And at that point, it felt like, now I grew up in a Christian household, but I was atheist for very, very long. I denied everything religious. And then I was suddenly like, whoa, I'm feeling Jesus. What the heck?
Mm.
Like my parts were not like totally confused, but it was such a beautiful feeling. And I think I remember I told you back then that I then realized that without reading even this chapter, and that's why it's probably my favorite chapter because it is so closely to an experience I had beforehand. I was talking to you about, how I'm doing internal family systems, and I feel like, I have this self and I have these parts. But you know what? I think there's a bigger self out there that is
Mm.
just like myself, but it's bigger. And I call it by the name Jesus or God consciousness because that's what feels most like that energy. You can call it any way you want. I don't care for that. I don't doesn't matter to me. Like this is just a personal, connection that I have. Maybe also from my past, who knows? But in that moment, I was like realizing, like, Daddy, like, there's something bigger. And whenever I have a moment where it's really hard for me to unblend, I actually started going into prayer now and connect with the other self
Mm.
and praying to that entity and telling them, hey, I am very little in self. I need your help or guide me through to be with the parts that need me, or
Mm.
help my parts, or help me to be with my parts.
Mm.
Just how my parts talk to me, I'm also sensing that, hey, maybe I can just try it out and talk to the other entity.
Something higher.
Yeah, exactly.
Engage with something higher.
Exactly. So it has actually become a very nice addition to doing internal family systems. Now, internal family system is still my main practice because I in myself, am there for my parts. But there are moments in life where it's sometimes really just difficult to be in self because you're so blended. And
Mm.
that's when I realized, hey, I just try that out. And I've been in this experiment for a little while now, on and off, and it's very interesting. So,
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that with everybody. Um, yeah. And it tangent, like it's interesting to hear you express that because I've obviously heard you express that directly to me. And in many ways, observing it, it's a very different way that you've expressed it today. So just observation for that. Um, but I was going to say what I found about, you know, internal family systems is, if we look at it in terms of what chapter 3 is talking about and the spirituality element of it, it's, for me, it really is, I wouldn't necessarily call it a religious journey because, you know, I have faith and I'm grounded in faith. The institution of religion is just a different thing, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
well, so if it says IFS connection to the higher self may need to come before exploring the parts because the parts need to have a self they can trust. Ah, I know you've got an answer you've got something to say there. I yeah, I can feel it.
Oh, this
Um,
is actually something that I'm experimenting right now.
exactly. And that's why I said
Yeah,
you've got
this is my
something to say
experiment
about
currently.
it.
I cannot answer which way is, the first way or in what way. I think for me it was first actually important to come into self and then from that to the higher self because I wouldn't have been able to connect with the um higher self. Are we talking about the higher self, the God essence, or my self energy?
Yes. Yes. IFS connection to the higher self may need to come before exploring the parts because the parts need to have a self they can trust.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can take it either way, I guess. And Sophie, you can further, unravel that ball of string. But yeah, I'm kind of taking it from there. The self that's connected with calm, etc. Exactly. Exactly, Deborah. Exactly. 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 I mean, what I was saying was, I remember when I started kind of coaching. Um, the term the universe, I always struggled with it because I couldn't understand where to place it.
Mhm.
And this was before IFS, this was before everything. Like I couldn't understand. It felt almost blasphemous to say trust in the universe.
Mhm.
And then one day, from nowhere, I just had this understanding of the universe being the Holy Spirit in the context of things. And for me, that felt right and calm for me. And going back to your point around, and maybe what kind of Sophie was talking about in terms of what I'm really loving about this book, it's like, having taught yourself how to fix an engine and then reading a book about it and be like, oh yeah, I do that anyways. I do that anyways. And that's what reading this book is like. It's like, oh wow, yeah, like I felt that, like I've been on that journey, like that spiritual essence and element of it. And the point that you're saying, well, not what you're saying, but what you've written, Sophie, around connection to the higher self may need to come before exploring the parts. And then what you said, Deborah said, for me, my parts kind of led me to myself. 100%. I did inner child work, I did shadow work, engaged with the ego, all before I worked. Well, I didn't even work on it. I kind of stumbled into, and I call it kind of like, working with the chakras, the truth chakra, and getting into my authentic space through that, which in essence is parts work, but just in a different costume,
Yeah.
you know?
I think for me it was also that when you were talking about, this trust the universe, I had parts within me that felt bypassed when I heard that, or I tried to tell myself that basically, right? So I think for me it was very, very crucial in my own journey. Now, every person's journey is different, so I cannot really answer that question. For some people, maybe it is, connecting to higher self that, or to an essence that we call God or universe that helps them to get into more self energy. Who knows? Like, there can also be. For me, however, it was also my parts that, or the parts work and the inner child healing and IFS that led me more to self. Because through the unburdening, I was able to access more self energy. And from that, I was able to finally connect more into with something higher than this person here, um, without my parts feeling triggered by it anymore.
Exactly.
I think it's very personal, like it's very individual. Um,
It really is.
yeah, I
Um,
think it is.
yeah, it really is. It's very personal. Um, what do you want to say? Do you want to say anything?
No, I think I'm good. How is everybody doing? Does anyone have a question? Do you want to say something? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I was just seeing Sophie talking about the seas. Someone else said the seas. Was it you, Sophie, earlier on? Oops, where did that go? Um,
No.
what?
I was just thinking of, now I'm referring to Christianity when I talk about God. And Christianity more kind of like because this is, kind of like the means that I am myself a little bit looking into. Um, it's not about religion, but it's more about the teachings and the essence that we see God as, meaning kind of like a leader, a father, right? And I was just thinking that, like our self is just exactly that, the compassionate leader that is within us that navigates all our parts. Hey,
Sorry, I'm saying
Deborah.
goodbye to Deborah.
Yeah, I saw. And I think that's why, in a way, this is also, resonating more to me than, or with me more than, just kind of like universe, because I get actually more of a picture of self energy there, um, with the, leadership in a way.
Mm,
So, but that's personal. That's very personal.
very, yeah, exactly. I hear that. I am, yeah, I feel like we're at time.
Yeah. So this
I,
chapter was a little bit different. We talked a lot about, spirituality, a little bit of Christianity from my side, because that's my own experience and all that, which is very interesting because usually when we talk about internal family systems, it's really not about that.
mm, yeah, exactly. And uh, Sophie, the point you brought up is an interesting one because I don't really see it as an external authority. Personally, I don't see it A as an authority or external because I don't believe there's a hierarchy in it. Because internal family, forget internal family systems. I don't, if I was to picture self and parts, and I'm very clear on it because I've got an image that, one of these sessions I'll show where it has my inner child in the middle and all my other parts seated next to my inner child. And there's a bear, there's a penguin, there's a puppy, there's an owl, there's a rabbit, all of the different parts which all kind of speak about certain things in me, whether it's ego, whether it's relationship to X, whatever it is. And there isn't a hierarchy there. There isn't a pecking order there. There isn't anyone who's in charge. It is egalitarian, you see. Um, and and I see your point around connecting to religion. And again, speaking for self, I I see religion being very different from faith. um, and that's it. I'll put a full stop there. Yeah. So, good session. I hope that was helpful. And I hope that, there was something that people took from it. Um, uh, and I hope everybody can join again. We will be back definitely on Sunday, maybe even next week, Tuesday. We shall see. Um, we shall see.
And for
But
next week,
again,
sorry.
no, go on, go on.
I didn't want to interrupt. It was a bit lagging. I thought you were taking a pause. For next week, we are not going into chapter 4, but we're doing exercises from chapter 3, right? Or
Yeah,
shall
on Sunday.
on Sunday, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Perfect.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and your parts.
Deep bows to everybody. Deep bows to their parts. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to my parts. And we'll see you all next time.